Jerry Sisk, JTV's co-founder and executive vice president, has always had a love of travel and a lifetime passion for gemstones. Being part of a fledgling television shopping network gave him the opportunity to do the two things he loved the most: travel to remote regions of the world and to search for some of nature's most elusive treasures. His passion for gems created a desire to study geology in college and pursue a graduate degree in gemology. Since the day JTV opened its doors, his single driving goal was to bring the world of gemstones to everyone by sharing the wonder and mystery of nature's most fascinating gifts. It didn't take long to realize that sharing that story meant going to the source, and getting to the source sometimes meant taking great personal risk. Follow Jerry as he travels to the deserts, jungles, and high plains of the gem-producing countries around the globe, experiencing both treacherous terrain and dangerous situations, all the time with his mind on the gems. In this story, follow the path of tanzanite from the mines at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, to the desert city of Jaipur, India. Jerry's life has been an ongoing tale of exploration, a search for the perfect, the unattainable, the new, and the different. This is the story of a gem explorer.
My name's Jerry Sisk, and I'm co-founder of Jewelry Television. I've been in the jewelry and gemstone business for, well, longer than I'd like to admit, but suffice it to say I got my start in the 60s as a fledgling jeweler's apprentice. For me, it was just the icing on the cake. I was actually paid to work with gemstones and jewelry. Of course, my love for gems started much earlier in my life. My first memory actually goes back to about 5 years of age. And I know that sounds crazy, but I remember walking along a pebble-strewn beach on a shoreline in New York State. It was actually a beautiful sunny day in fall, and we were visiting some of our friends. As I walked along the waterline, one really colorful pebble caught my eye, so I picked it up and I put it in my pocket. And then I saw another, and by the time we were ready to leave, my pail and both pockets were full of colorful pebbles. Felt like a king with the world's largest treasure. Unfortunately, my parents didn't share that same enthusiasm, and they only allowed me to take a couple of stones home. The painful part was trying to pick only 2 stones out of my entire stash of treasure. I now realize that my fascination with these colorful pebbles was really the beginning of my lifetime passion for gems. I have to say that I've been blessed with an inquisitive mind. I like to understand how things work, and I really don't mind getting my hands dirty in the process. From my earliest memories, I've sought enrichment of my basic knowledge through reading and first-hand experience whenever I could. To give you an idea what that means to me, consider a computer. When my wife got her first PC, she only cared that it worked. When I got my first computer, I needed to know how it worked, so I opened it up, disassembled it piece by piece, and then rebuilt it. Since then, I've enjoyed building dozens of computers from scratch and fine-tuning the systems. That's what makes me tick. So when it comes to gemstones, I want answers to how, why, and really dozens of other questions. Learning from textbooks is not a bad way to start, but to understand the true nature of any subject, I feel you have to experience it firsthand, which means personal and physical interaction. For me, that can be traveling to a trade show or some remote region of the world, shaking hands, looking into the eyes of a miner or dealer, or even walking down into a mine and grabbing a pick or shovel to satisfy my curiosity. A major focus of my quest for gems is forging new relationships and strengthening the old ones. Strong relationships are critical when new gems arrive in the buying district. Being second in line for a phone call rarely wins a prize. A really good example of this is the blue Masasi color-changing garnet from Tanzania. JTV got the first phone call for this incredibly rare find. Gemstones have always been more than the business to me personally. I get lost in gems. Anyone that knows me well has seen that faraway look in my eyes when I'm handed an especially beautiful or exotic gemstone. I tend to phase out of reality for a while and can't concentrate on anything else. For me, every single gemstone is special. Many look the same to the eye, but each gem is different and unique in its own way. If you take the time to look even deeper and closer, you can find what makes that gem special. It might contain an unusual crystal, needle, bubble, or some other internal characteristic that has its own special story. My gemstone journeys have taken me many thousands of miles to different countries and some truly wild and remote places in this vast world, and we're going to look at some of those adventures together. Since there isn't enough time in anyone's life to travel to every international gemstone vendor, miner, and jewelry manufacturer, we often find ourselves traveling to places where all these gemstone professionals gather, be it Hong Kong, Thailand, Tucson, or even the wilds of Las Vegas. These gemstone gatherings happen a few times every year in every corner of the world. I didn't want to miss mentioning these gatherings in this forum because there's no way that anybody or anyone, even the most ardent of travelers like myself, could travel to the mining fields of, for instance, Canada, or to some of the chrome dioxide mines in Russia, or even Inner Mongolia without a red cape and superpowers. My adventures aren't over yet, but for now, let's take a look back. You know, I've talked about a lot of the travel we've done, but the first time you ever go anywhere, it's kind of an out of the body experience almost. You know, we had to travel to Mexico. The first trip I ever did, I did it with Bob. Matter of fact, Bob Hall was one of the other co-founders back in '93. When we finally get to the mine, our heads have been bouncing off the top of this vehicle. It's hot in there. There's no air conditioning. There's no fans. It's got to be 95, 96 degrees out. And we arrive, and it's basically a big hole in the ground. And we're talking about, this is a volcanic outcropping basically, and they're using pickaxes, jackhammers. They did actually have compressors at this one, and that was like the state of their technology, was a compressor with one or two jacks. And they were using explosives to blow the sides out of this mountain. And they were bringing up this rock, and that's what the opal was in. And it was the most amazing thing, but getting there took us quite a few hours in this beat-up vehicle, and the only thing I ever saw were lizards, snakes, and spiders on this whole process. I didn't even see any birds. We finally got there, and I realized how much work it was taking to get the opals out of this mine. And we have pictures of this, of course, and they have this wire that goes from the top of the mine down probably, I was gonna say meters, I guess I should do it in yards since we're in the States here, but probably going down 200 yards into this hole. And it's basically all volcanic, so it's like rhyolite is what it is. And what they do is they'd have this, it wasn't a bucket, but it's like a little tram or trolley thing that came down on this wire. They would dump the boulders and things into this, and then it'd be pulled all the way back up to the top. The guy would unhook it, and they'd roll it down the hill and around the corner, and they'd have 30 or 40 guys down there with mallets and, you know, sitting on a rock, and they're going bang, bang, bang. And I remember sitting there and looking at the today's production. We were there the whole day watching these guys and filming. And they came over, and at one point they had a little plastic bag. One guy came over with a handful, another guy came over and he put everything they had from that day's production. And it was a little plastic bag about that big, and he opens it up. And I mean, everything that they had done for the whole day, you could hold it in my hands. And most of it wasn't gem quality. You couldn't use it for gemstones. You know, we talk about sapphires and different gems. One of the big sapphires, the big three, is sapphire, ruby, emerald. Well, we've gone to Thailand, to Kanchanaburi, to look at the mines there. They were kind of on the downslope with the production, but they're pulling up a lot of earth and not getting a lot of product for their trouble. And they had the tumblers where this material was coming through, and they had these metal cages that are moving and tumbling, and what it's doing is it's breaking this material out into different size groups that they'll scoop up, and they were taking it over another place where it was being washed, and then it was going down a almost like a conveyor belt, and they had all these workers along the conveyor belts, and what they're doing there, and they had what do you call it, chopsticks, and they're like this, and they have them bang, 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 work, and it's like this, and you see them like this, and they're trying to pull out sapphire crystals or other crystals that might be valuable, and they're pushing everything else and throwing it off here to the side, and there's like this process, and their hands are just keep moving, and then you see at the end of the day they have all these crystals. Well, then they have to sort them for, like, some are darker, some are richer blue, some are smaller, some are unusual shapes. So, you know, they're putting these in different gram weight bags, and then they're separating them out by clarity and by color and by the size and even by the shape. And so they're kind of doing a sort, what I call preliminary sort in the rough. That's all part of the process. But those mines are pretty much, they're gone. And you still see sapphires coming out of Thailand, but generally it's sapphires from other sources that are sold through the Thai market, because it is basically a trade center of the world for gemstones.
Whenever you think of gold, you think of the city of Arezzo, the heart of gold manufacturing. Behind me stands a wall that was built over 2,000 years ago. Yet the tradition of making gold spans a period greater than that. Arezzo is the heart and soul of gold country. Gold manufacturing has come a long way, but even with the introduction of time-saving technology, today's Italian gold still maintains a tradition of exceptional craftsmanship. Jewelry making begins with pure gold and alloys like silver and brass being mixed together and melted at temperatures ranging from 1700 to over 1900 degrees. The molten mix is poured into a metal mold, creating a brick of 10, 14, or 18 karat gold. The brick is then rolled into thin sheets, sliced, and made even thinner, drawing it through plates until desired diameter is reached. Only now is the gold ready to be crafted and polished into a finished piece of jewelry like earrings, bracelets, or chains. As you shop for your gold jewelry, consider the many people and steps involved that make Italian gold so celebrated.
The big thing about the gem journey, when we talk about the quest for gems, is that you realize you can't be every place in the world all the time. So one of the really important aspects of the gemstone trade and the jewelry trade is going to major trade shows and conferences where you can have an exchange of information. So we do major trade shows. You have a couple of them here in the U.S., amazingly. A lot of people don't realize it, but Tucson, a major international gem trade show. Vendors probably from 30 or more countries come in for a period of time spread over a few weeks there in February, and they come to the U.S. and you get to see a lot of times product as it's hitting. So it's an opportunity point to either make new relationships or find new product. By the same token, there are many vendors who don't have the money or the ability to come to these domestic shows. So in many cases, we have to travel to some of the bigger trade shows in Asia, and whether that's going to be in India, whether that's going to be in Thailand, or whether that's going to be in China, we will go to those. And those are important too, because when you get there, some of those vendors have product, but like I said, they don't come to the U.S. because of the expense, or they don't have the contacts here, so they only maybe show regionally at one of these larger shows. And so we'll go to the larger show, and then you find another whole sphere or a whole set of contacts that you might not have seen in the States. And so we have to go to different trade shows around the world. Now, there's also a big aspect of this is keeping up with all the changes and the trends and the treatments and things. We go to a lot of conferences, a lot of seminars. We meet with other experts in the trade, and we share information. That's really a very important aspect of this, and we help look at some of even the nomenclature. What should we call this? We're part of that process. And when you go to these shows, you see not only maybe a dozen different cultures, you might see 24 different cultures or more represented, or countries, I should say. And you have the opportunity to make those new acquaintances, and it's amazing what you find every time we go to a trade show, because the faces do change a little every year, and you always have some new faces coming in, and you find something exciting, and you get them here at Jewelry Television. Well, the nice thing about, travel is important. I mean, you can read. Everybody can read books, and I do that all the time. Don't get me wrong. First thing I ever did when I found out I had to go on air and sell some gemstones was start reading a book, because I didn't know as much as I knew I should. And then as I read more, I realized I really didn't know enough. But as part of this process of learning and getting an education about gemstone, you have to go to different places. You have to actually meet people. You have to shake their hands, talk to them, ask them questions. Sometimes you may have to go out in the middle of nowhere and use a pick and a shovel. I mean, I've done that too. We've walked down into mines, into black holes. I mean, some of you look and say, I'm not sure if I really want to go in there, but that's part of bringing the story back to JTV and back to our viewers.
Gem mining in general is a contrast of individuals who toil side by side with the same goal. In the broad scope of my travels, I've seen this no truer than the country of Tanzania. Perhaps nowhere else on the planet are these individuals as concentrated as the few square kilometers that comprise the Tanzanite mines of Merlani. This is where the first world meets third, in a geological pressure cooker that turns brown earth into blue jewels. These brave miners spend their lives toiling in dangerous conditions, with the possibility of collapse of the world around you at every minute spent in those black holes. I had to see this for myself. I've had the honor of traveling to this amazing country twice, once in 2005 and then again in 2010. Both times were on the search for the story of the beautiful blue Tanzanite. Discovered in the late 1960s, Tanzanite has been a major player in the history of jewelry television, and it's one of my favorite gemstones, but traveling there has its perils. Ever since the Masasi tribesmen stumbled upon shimmering blue crystals in the shadow of Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro, Tanzanite's become one of the world's most sought-after gemstones. Following this discovery, Tanzanite quickly became one of the world's most popular gems. Lying in the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro, the world's only commercial Tanzanite deposits have resulted from massive tectonic activity that created one of the most highly mineralized zones in the world, the Mozambique orogenic belt. Tanzania's gem deposits are a highlight of this belt, which cuts a 200 to 300 kilometer wide north-south swath through the central and eastern part of the African continent. Running all the way from Mozambique in the south to Sudan and Ethiopia in the north, it's home to many of East Africa's most important colored gemstone finds. Rocks in this belt underwent several different cycles, including folding and faulting. The result of all this tumultuous metamorphic activity is one of the richest gem belts on the planet. Tanzanite is recovered from pegmatitic veins that have broken into smaller pieces known as boudins. Gems are found in small pockets within these boudins.
This right here is a boudin. This is the light colored Tanzanite. So the deeper we go, the darker the Tanzanite's going to get. So onward.
Originally, Tanzanite could easily be collected on the surface, but this scavenger mining quickly gave way to pits and now tunnels, some of which extend hundreds of yards beneath the surface. While the first Tanzanite deposits were discovered by a native Tanzanian, the potential wealth quickly attracted outsiders. Soon the Merlani Hills were awash with thousands of fortune seekers, and as you might expect, there was a lot of chaos involved. We were hosted by two of the largest Tanzanite vendors in the world during our most recent visit to Africa. They took us to the most active mining blocks, Block C and Block D. The public company Tanzanite One runs the mining in Block C, and the contrast between the different mining blocks couldn't be more different. All of Merlani's Tanzanite mines lie within a slender strip of land. This is Tanzania's most important gem mining area, with thousands of people and families supported by mining, cutting, and trading Tanzanite in Merlani, Arusha, and beyond. Thousands of miners are said to work at Block D alone, which is the area where the deepest tunnels are found, as the deposits trend downward in depth from Blocks A through D. The Tanzanite One mine is a pretty amazing mechanized mining operation, to say the least. Indeed, the entire operation gives visitors the impression that they really know what they're doing, from the mining conditions underground to the efforts of the Tanzanite Foundation, a nonprofit group dedicated to promoting Tanzanite and assisting the people who mine it. I'm standing in a secondary school room right now. This is one of many, many projects provided by the Tanzanite Foundation. And these projects are made possible by the sales of Tanzanite in Europe, America, and other parts of the world. Every time you purchase one of these beautiful blue-violet stones from Tanzania, you indirectly help the community, the Maasai community, as we see it here. Tanzanite One is learning and perfecting their methods more every year. They're constantly making rich strikes in new areas and bringing up exciting finds of other gemstones
like the rich green grossular garnets known as savarite. They're also doing a very respectable job at restoring the land to its original rolling green hills, which stands out as a very different sight from the chopped-up landscape of the artisanal mining in other blocks. Kilimanjaro International Airport lies some 50 kilometers from Arusha, where we start our trek. From Arusha to the Merlani Hills is about 70 kilometers along rutted dirt roads. Gear up because the drive to the mines is rough, and if you get a good rainfall while visiting, the risk of getting stuck is always looming, no matter what you're driving. On our most recent trip there, things were going along fairly well for about an hour, and our light conversation in the truck was brought to a rapid halt by a series of violent thumps. We had just turned off the road maintained by the Tanzanite Foundation. We're now on the regular road to Merlani. These few kilometers were as rough as anything one could imagine and left us all grasping for the handholds in the vehicle. The sunrise in the morning we set off for the mines was beautiful. We gathered water, packed our camera equipment, and set out to meet our escorts. Little did we know that we were going to see some of the most amazing sights of our lives, including the descent over 1,000 feet into a threatening black hole and visiting a Maasai trading village that was absolutely exhilarating, but I have to say more than a little intimidating. Merlani's Block D is a hodgepodge of hundreds of small claims stuffed into a few hundred square meters that bring to mind old photographs of our own gold rush. Each claim is surrounded by walls of barbed wire topped tin siding. Each roof covers a shaft going pretty much straight down. Some with ladders, some with a gradual descent, but all were dug mostly by hand with the implicit dream of striking riches. Arriving at the mines in Block D, the gate was eased open and quickly slammed shut behind us. Each claim was rigorously guarded. Claim jumping is very real in this part of the world. Indeed, in these native blocks, the intrusions often come deep underground, with one miner breaking into the shaft of another miner's tunnels while following a promising budan. Down in these tunnels, survival trumps legal or ethical boundaries. In the first small compound we visited, about 30 miners were working underground in 6-hour shifts. The mine manager was a gracious host. He explained his operation, and he also explained that he hadn't hit any gem-quality tanzanite in almost 6 months, but recently he had found some very interesting indicator stones. From this amazing operation, we ventured about a quarter of a mile to the property of another substantial claim holder that had been operating in these hills since the very first finds were made. As we drove into the compound, the feeling was very different. This mine had been very lucky recently. The air was slightly electric. They were excited to see us, and the feeling was mutual. Soon it was time to descend. Ryan Acree, our director, started to get himself prepared for the journey. As our guides began wrapping their faces with bandanas, we were told the main shaft begins with a vertical drop of some 100 yards, accessed by a wooden ladder. This then connects to several very narrow side tunnels that, after 200 to 300 yards of lateral distance, would bring us to the current mining face. At this point, the adults, which included me, the elder statesman of the group, suggested that someone would certainly be needed to remain topside to call for a doctor should an accident arrive. We quickly volunteered, ever vigilant, waiting for the return of our fearless and intrepid director, Ryan.
Come back. I'll buy you a beer.
After several members of our party disappeared down the rabbit hole, individual miners emerged from the indigo depths, coated head to foot in graphite dust. The ladder was strictly one way. The vertical descent had only a few places where it was possible to rest a bit. With no rope or hard hat on most of the other miners, one could only pray that nobody above would fall during the descent, for that would mean certain tragedy for all unfortunate enough to be on the ladder below. At the working face, the men described to our cameras what they were doing, excitedly pointing the veins they were mining, following the pyrite and snaking budans. Ryan could see in their eyes the excitement, and only then did it become clear what was motivating them to work under such extreme conditions. Their fuel was hope. Hope to hit a gem pocket. Hope to become rich like the others had. They struggled to explain that in their village or city, they had no chance of the future. But here, deep within the earth, with hard work and a bucket full of luck, they might just get enough money for a better life. We waited more than 2 long hours for our friend to return. Finally, as the sun was beginning to set on Mount Kilimanjaro, black ghosts of men crawled from the hole, but no word of our partner in the journey. Interestingly enough, we had full cell service from the opening of the mine shaft. So the whole time Ryan was filming underground, we were in contact with his wife, family, and the customers of JTV. Once Ryan emerged from the hole, he was dripping with sweat and coated in dust, and needed several minutes simply to be able to stand and speak. All we could do was clap and hug him. The other miners emerged on the surface and collapsed, gasping for breath. The miners were smiling and laughing. Ryan had a look of astonishment as we clapped for his return. Within a few hours, his escort miners would go down again, not to visit, but to work, break rocks in their search for a little bit of hope, a fragment, a circle of light in a black world. Hard work so that a man in a distant land can offer a lovely stone to the woman of his dreams, or another avid gemstone collector can add to his or her collection. Let's make this clear. We've spent years visiting gem mines across the world and have borne witness to scenes of tremendous hardship. But on that afternoon, none of us were prepared for the spectacle that unfolded as we watched miners crawl from the graphite-laced depths of Merlani, gasping for air, covered with sweat as they emerged from below. We didn't have much time to congratulate our intrepid warrior Ryan, as we quickly had to load up the trucks and head back. An impending storm was coming, and we needed, for safety's sake, not to stay too long on the roads after dark. The city of Arusha is where you land when flying into Tanzania to visit the mines in the Merlani Hills. The Arusha region claims a population of over 1 million people, including over 250,000 in the city itself. It's a bustling metropolis, and it's home to hundreds of rough gemstone dealers. The gemstone market is very competitive. You have Maasai rough stone dealers coming down out of the hills from the trading villages once a week looking to exchange their goods they collected from the artisanal miners. The men that we met were surprisingly diverse, from towering Maasai warriors in traditional garb to completely Western-dressed Middle Eastern gentlemen. Our vendors have set up offices in various areas of the city. The rough buyers stay in their villages or near the entrance of the mines in the beginning of the week, and then Thursday morning start their journey into town for the big trading days in Arusha. We passed men walking or riding bicycles, saw ox carts, and even a few cars heading into the city. We walked into our first office to find a line of men waiting patiently, queued up holding everything from a tightly clasped handkerchief to a large shopping bag loaded with what looked like weeks' worth of groceries. Let the bargaining begin. The first person walks in and takes a seat across the table, where he gingerly unwraps his goods. You never know what you're going to be seeing. We saw tourmaline, tsavorite, spessartite, and of course, tanzanite. Rough gemstone buying is an art. Specialized rough buyers are rare because it's such a risky venture. When you look at an untreated rupee or brown piece of crystal, you need to be able to hold it up to the light and see if there are any internal issues. Know with heating how blue the stone will become, what the finished faceted gemstone will produce, and how many pieces can be cut from the piece, and much more. I was in awe of the men that were able to do this. I've been in the jewelry and gemstone trade for nearly 45 years, but this was a whole different level of expertise. With a cursory glance at what looks slightly like gravel, they make an offer or push the precious bundle back across the table to the seller. What I found so interesting about this whole process is that our vendors were in most instances the first offices to be visited. That means we were offered the best pieces first, bringing to our JTV customers the pick of what is being found on a weekly basis. If our representatives didn't take the rough lots, the sellers just walked to the next office, where we heard repeatedly that the lot was purchased for another company being represented in the city. Even from the first step in the process of opening the world of jewelry and gemstones to everyone, we're there picking the best of the best for you. One of the interesting trips we have, because we go back to countries, more than one time, of course, because you have to keep updating your information, seeing what's new in the trade, and find out what's going on. And so you constantly keep touching base with different points on the globe. Well, on the last trip back to Tanzania, we were having a pretty good trip, and we were getting ready to wrap it up. We had our whole filming crew, producer, and everything there, buyers, and we came back after a really long day, and we're watching the news, and we're hearing about an Icelandic volcano, which the name I can never pronounce, by the way. And we're thinking, wow, that's really bad. And then we start hearing about something about shutting down airports. Now, we've been in Tanzania for as long as we needed to be at this point. We've been to the buying district. We've been out to the base of Kilimanjaro. We filmed the mines. We've been to different places. And we're thinking, somebody better call the airport. Well, sure enough, here we are at the end of our trip, and we're going to leave. I think it was the next day. The airport closes down. And guess what? They closed air traffic all across Europe. And so we call our company back and say, hey, we're having a little bit of trouble here. We can't leave East Africa. And what are we going to do? And so they're trying to book flights. We can't book flights. So we spent like an extra 10 or 12 days in East Africa. Now, the good news was, while we were there, we actually bought a large piece of tanzanite rough and decided, hey, the Icelandic volcano kind of stranded us here in East Africa. we got this big piece of rough. We might as well go to India and just follow it. We got it directly from Block D in the mine. We took possession of it, and we flew directly to India.
I'm holding a very, very large piece of tanzanite rough, and what makes this piece special is that we saw it, came out of Block D in Tanzania, and we decided to select this one to follow it throughout the entire world. Now we're in a center in India here where they do a lot of this cutting, the majority of tanzanite cutting. And we've had what I call a master brooder come in here. He's amazing. He's done this for many, many years. He actually took a marking pencil and he looked at this piece of rough for a while and decided that the first cut was going to be made right across this portion of the stone. But what he's going to do is make a cut there, and this will be sliced a couple of times. But when he does that, you notice there's a little hump to this piece of rough. Now, that's going to be the pavilion of the stone. This may be an oval or a cushion. The top portion, when he makes the cut here, will be the table and the crown. Now, what's interesting is you just see it generally in the finished form. This piece was worked on really prior to it got to India. Then when it gets here, it has to be worked on again. There's quite a few steps before you see a beautiful gemstone in a ring or your gemstone collection. Now, after this is sliced, he's going to have to take a look at both pieces, make sure that this piece is okay. Once he's sliced it, you can see more inside there. And he has to take the other piece and then figure out, what am I going to do with this larger piece? Now, originally we were thinking maybe 3 pieces, maybe more. He was saying the same thing. So once he comes back and looks at these two, he may make another marking and another slice. Maybe the case, maybe 3, even 4 pieces. Then he has to come back after he decides he's made all the slices that he needs to do what they call preforming. They'll start grinding the stone down into its basic shape. And then from there, they'll take the preformed stones and put them in the kiln or the oven, and they'll be heated overnight. Now what you're looking at in my hands are 3 tanzanites, and these tanzanites are attached to a dop stick. Now I have usually some type of wax-like compound that actually holds them on the sticks. These sticks are wooden. They could be metal too. Most of the ones I've seen are wooden sticks, but this allows the guy that's cutting and polishing to have a grip on these when he's actually putting them against a charged metal plate that will have some type of oxides and abrasives so that they can polish the surfaces. But this is a very handy little creature, and every stone that you see that gets faceted will end up in one of these dop sticks. Now eventually they'll do one side, and then they'll pop it off and flip it around, reattach it, and they'll do the opposite side. And so pretty much every gemstone goes through the same progression. This is the final portion of our journey in the Tanzanite tail. This piece I'm holding is the Marilani star. It started out as a very, very large piece of rough. It was basically cut into 3 individual pieces, which I have here. So basically from Block D in Tanzania at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, this rough traveled with us. It's been with us now for nearly 3 weeks. It's come to this facility. They've done the slicing, they've done the grinding, they've done the heating, preforming, everything. Now is the final stage. So what you're going to see is the last step in an incredible journey from Tanzania to Jaipur and eventually to America. 3 amazingly beautiful stones from beginning to end.
We took it all the way from Block D in Tanzania to Jaipur and then brought that back to Knoxville. And that was an amazing experience. And part of that was a little longer trip because of an Icelandic volcano. Who expects a volcano to go off while you're traveling for gems?
The next time you set your eyes on a rare and exotic gem from the Serengeti of East Africa, the jungles of South America, or even the steppes of Russia, remember that you're looking at an amazing treasure of nature that's found in one of the most distant and remote regions of Earth. It's a treasure that may be hundreds or even thousands of miles from the common conveniences of modern life. Through my travels, I've had the opportunity to gain a first-hand view of the difficulties and challenges surrounding the gemstone pipeline.
It's been a great honor to travel to many distant lands and break bread with miners and dealers in an attempt to understand the complexity of their trade. It's given me a greater appreciation for the hard work and labor that transforms an unshapely piece of rough into a gem of exceptional beauty. My gemstone journey is far from over, and this look back has renewed my passion for exploring the world further. Where will I be heading next? Who knows? Possibly a rainforest in some remote South American country, or even a desert in the heart of Africa. That's part of the adventure of being a gemstone explorer. One thing you can be assured of, if JTV isn't there physically, we'll be well represented by our many trusted partners in this worldwide quest for gems. As new stones are discovered, JTV will be at the forefront to bring you the quality, value, and selection that sets us apart. But you have to keep watching because, like me, you never know what you may see next. This is my life and my quest. I'm Jerry Sisk, and I hope you've enjoyed these reflections from my gemstone journeys.